Well, cheers, mate.
Cheers, Steve.
Good to catch up.
It is.
Today I'm with Mal Gilham. Now, Mal's done lots of different kinds of fishing, but in the last couple of years, he's really made a bit of an art form or a bit of a science out of trolling in our southern estuaries, and I want to talk to him about that. But Mal, I wanted to start off just by asking you what your earliest fishing memories are and how you got started.
Memories of catching shrimp with Dad originally when we lived out in the bush, but more that when we came back to Sydney, my grandfather was a great fisherman on the Hawkesbury.
Right.
Catch jewfish, bream mainly, but yeah, we'd work the tides. We'd have a day where we'd generally go after work, as most people do, and work a turn of the tide for jewfish and then fish on the run-up tide for bream, all into the evening, and generally in the night time for bream. But yeah, grandfather used to sort of put in at the Barrow region, and then we would travel, right down to the bridge at Brooklyn sometimes. That would generally be a day outing. Like, he started to get fairly old by the time we could do that. Have another uncle who I worked with, his son, so my cousin, he was keen in the bream fishing as well, and also Dad, he fished with his dad, and Dad's two brothers they were really keen Jew fishermen in the Hawkesbury in the early days, like the 70s and 80s.
And that was mostly bait fishing in those days? Mostly
bait fishing. We used to do a little bit of lure fishing with a couple of my mates, more so than my family, and that's probably where the lure side of things started. We'd get big numbers of bream in those days. It was, it was the way it used to be. You'd go and you wouldn't go home till you had your sugar bag, sort of thing. Right. But as things progressed and when we started fishing with lures, we started to target bigger bream and things like that, and flathead were a bycatch. And
so were you starting to come down to the south coast for holidays and things even then?
Into the late teens is when we sort of started to really come to the south coast.
Right. And fell in love with it?
Yeah, fishing wise to start with, no, it was very hard. It wasn't used to the system that we knew. And yeah, hence we put a lot of hours in trolling around in these estuaries trying to find spots.
And is that what got you hooked on the trot? You used it as a way to find fish in the first place, but then you found that it was a very effective way of catching them as well.
Yeah, it was sort of a progression. Those couple of mates that I'd fished with since I was young, they'd been on around Australia Odyssey sort of thing, and they did a lot of it, exploring and adventuring, and used the trolling method to find where they could catch fish. So it was sort of, it's worked in the territory, it worked through the top of Western Australia, it worked sort of everywhere they went. No, not overly successful, but it was a way of locating spots, finding spots, and catching fish, really. So.
But then you sort of took it beyond that, and I know that you've become very, very good at it. What are the techniques that you use? I mean, what marks the difference between someone who just throws a lure out the back of the boat and drives around and hopes to catch something compared to what you're doing?
It is boat skill, really. It's the difference between having the boat skill to be able to control the boat in the current, the tide and the wind, and knowing what the lure's doing and how it's responding to what you're doing in the boat.
Right.
That's the majority of it. Like, I'll troll out on the river and you'll see people come past me that we've caught a few fish. Next thing you know, there's 8 boats trolling, and they're not catching anything because they're whizzing past you. We've got a little joke we have in the boat. Oh, here comes another mahi fisherman.
Yeah. Trolling for tuna, trolling for wahoo. Not going to catch too many of those in the river. So speed is critical, and I think something that a lot of people don't take into consideration. That varies depending on whether you're running with the tide or into the tide, doesn't it? It's the effective speed of the water past the lure rather than the speed the boat's travelling over the ground.
If you as soon as we line the tide and the wind up, or the windsocks out, we're in a calm estuary, and we're, people going past, and we're under troll with a windsock.
Right.
They look at it and shake your head. They don't understand why, but
so you can go slow enough.
Slow enough. Like, we all have 4-stroke motors now, and we all have a troll mechanism on them where we turn the motor down as slow as we can go. And just putt along. But and then different lures respond in different ways. So a lure that you may find that works real effective under really low speed, obviously doesn't work as well when it's quick. There's some that need that little bit of extra speed. It's just being able to understand through the end of your rod tip how the lure's responding in the water.
And of course, the line diameter, how far back you put the lure, all those things dictate what it does.
If the lure's a deep diver, you can give it that 30, 40, 50, maybe 80 metres behind, and it'll still respond the same. If it's a shallower diving, or you're in shallower water, you want to shorten up and get that lure in contact with the bottom.
Yeah. So you want to be making regular contact with the bottom.
Now there's a big, there's a big sort of secret to that. That's the art in the trial.
And that's got to come down to, once you establish the depth that lure's running at that speed and with that much line out, you've got to then use your sounder to stay in that depth contour, haven't you? And I mean, electronics are obviously important. Your favourite lures come and go, I know. If you could only have 2 or 3 lures to troll the estuaries, what would they be?
Got some out here, tried along with them. Within a week I started catching dewies on them. It's like, and bigger flathead.
Yeah.
And it was good. They were lip hooked, just in the mouth, fight the fish, easy release, less time out of the water. And that was
so happy to lure it up. You're dealing with big flathead and stuff, you'd want to beef up your leaders a little bit.
Yeah, 14 pounder, max it out.
Wow.
Really max it out. That's more when you're after mulloway.
Yeah, okay. And what length leaders?
Just 6 foot.
Yep.
Nothing over the top.
And nice skinny braid down to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you always trolling on your petrol motor, or do you troll with your electric?
Yeah. There was one thing with mulloway, I found that if you know they're in the system and you know where they are and you've sounded them out, I really feel that only hitting the spot once or a couple of times in that strike time is the time to catch them. If I've had mates come down that want to catch them mulloway and we can see them in the river, we'll troll past them all day long, and they won't hit the lure. And it'll even get to the point where it's strike zone, like I'm looking at tide, the water's slackened, all of those things, and they're still not interested. Whereas I can go out sometimes with Nina on the weekend, and what are we going to do?
So you've had some great days. Any particular captures or sessions that stand out in the memory banks?
One session with Nina, just a Sunday afternoon, we put in, and within 500 metres we'd bagged 4 dewies.
Wow!
So they were just on the bite.
Yeah.
A couple of sessions where it's just every 20 or 30 metres, and you find that a lot, that they will school up, like they're just a schooling fish. And you get one small one, you know that there's bigger ones there. There's enough footage on flathead now in river mouths that you see, you'll see these guys at free dive. There's one big one and 4 little ones.
Little ones around it and all that sort of thing. And we've talked mostly dewies and flathead, but it's incredible the amount of variety of fish that you've caught. Just about everything that lives in the estuary you've caught at one time or another.
Everything, squid, flounder, mullet, anything just seems to hit that lure if you can get it to swim. You swim right. So.
And what's still on the wish list? What's the bucket list?
Oh, I suppose the metre, the solid metre plus flathead.
Yeah. How close have you come?
96. We're all the few mates. We're all up at that sort of range. I actually have caught a 98.
Right.
It wasn't a real good looking fish at the time. It had been out on its way back, I'd say.
It's a bit skinny.
It was a bit skinny, but yeah.
Other times you get those 85s that are just
huge.
So beefy.
Yeah. And different, it's amazing, different systems, there seem to be different shapes. There are a few of the older blokes here that catch some really big flathead, but they just don't seem to be in the regions that I am, like in that sort of thing. That group of, 75 to 90 fish still seem to do that traditional move down to the river mouths for spawning time and travel back up the river and up the estuary systems at other times. But these big mythical monsters, they seem to be in shallow waters in really strange spots.
Yeah, but every big flathead that gets away is a metre fish. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
I lost a couple of metres today.
That's one thing that's lucky with the lure fishing and with those trebles. Once that big flathead seems to bite down the fish, you very, very rarely lose one once the fight's on.
Yeah, right.
If you just have your drag set sensibly and angle the fish,
they don't come unstuck all that often.
Not very often. If they get to the top and big head shake.
Around.
Yeah, but if you're sensible about it and you don't have any panic, and you just angle the fish to the boat, you're very unlucky to lose one with that. That's six barbs out there.
Yeah. Well, look, mate, the meatery is out there somewhere, and it's probably got your name on it. I'll drink to that. Cheers. What do you think of the bench boat?
Yeah, nice.